Nobody's filming. Y'all ready?
No, Jeremy, when you come, bring me a water, please, sir.
You leading?
Uh-uh.
I'm leading.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on this beautiful March morning where we have sprung forward. So hopefully you all are here with us now for this wonderful Journey and Truth service. This is our week that we do truth and trending topics with the Revs. So let's introduce each one, starting to my left.
Reverend Terry.
Reverend Sharon.
Reverend Drea.
Reverend Jada.
All right, guys. Thanks again for joining us. We have a very interesting topic that we're going to focus on today. Instead of a bunch of topics like what we usually do, we are going to be focusing in today on one particular topic. It is the movie Origin, which is based on the book by Isabel Wilkerson called Cast. It was starring Anjanou Ellis-Taylor, and it was directed by Ava DuVernay. So as a group, we went and saw it last month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We went and saw it again.
And so we saw it again. Right? And
So
we thought it was a wonderful movie for us to have a great discussion, media discussion. So please, if you're out there in YouTube land with us, don't hesitate to put your questions or your comments. We have someone moderating the chat, so we'll be able to even mention some of your questions or anything that you have to say. And of course, our audience out here who's with us live in studio, you like that?
Yeah.
Live in studio can go ahead and share as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, before we dive into the different parts of the movie, let's just discuss overall. Let's just do an overall. We don't have to get deep right now. Just overall, what was your impressions of the movie? Anybody?
Well, you know, a lot of times people say something is deep. This was deep. There were a lot of layers to this, and I think that's one of the reasons why I had to see it twice, because there was so much information there, so many things to ponder and to really look up and to delve further into. It's almost as if you were in a classroom environment.
Mm-hmm.
So you learned a lot about history, you learned a lot about culture and societal norms. So it was a really, really deep artistic film.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Reverend Jada. Reverend Terry, you were about to say something?
Well, yeah, I think for me, the movie I connected with the movie in a number of ways. I think that some of the things that she discusses with her premise with caste versus or how it encompasses race are things that I believed for a number of years. But on a different level, just watching her story was so captivating. And while she was going through gathering the material to write the book or going through the experience, the loss and the personal impact that it had on her just really touched me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Reverend Sharon?
I wrote it down because for me, it was many layers, and I didn't want to forget anything. What I saw in the movie, of course, was this idea of the caste system, racial incidents, discrimination, inclusion, exclusion, empathy, but also elder care, death and dying, global instances of racism and caste systems in India. She talked a little bit about Trayvon Martin, that unknown Martin Luther King speech, but above all, I saw this idea of compassion and love present in the film.
Definitely, definitely. I'll ask the audience, did anybody have a chance to see it? And did anybody have any impressions of it?
So, yes, I saw it. I need to see it probably 3 more times. But like Jada said, Reverend Jada said, it was deep. That's the understatement. But one of the things that I took from it is that I felt like if people weren't uncomfortable, you probably should have been uncomfortable when you watched it. And it also raised, for me, it raised some questions about, and maybe for all of us, we, in what ways have we dismissed people, or for the way they thought, or what they believed, who they loved, or how they dressed, and who are we? Who are we now? Who are we back then? And how can we use the tools that movie provided to maybe change our perspective, to start bridging the gap, tearing down those barriers. Another thing that stuck out was, you hear people say, "Well, I didn't have anything to do with slavery, or I didn't treat people bad in India." It's like, I think when people choose not to look, choose not to see, that somehow it gives them permission to treat people in ways that are, different, that will treat people differently based on what appears to be different outwardly. But when we choose to look and see, we begin to see connections, and where we all are alike in spite of our differences. And there was many illustrations in the movie that brought that point home.
Go on, Reverend Trina.
Wonderful.
Well, to chime in, I just saw the movie this past Friday, and the thing I thought after the movie went off was how much I appreciate my ministry for, because I knew nothing about the movie. I hadn't seen the trailer, commercial. Like, I literally was just walking in there like, one for origin. Just like, I'm like,
Yeah, actually, I wonder about the name, because the name kind of like, it makes it sound like it's like aliens or something else.
Yeah, so they kind of threw me off, and just, I guess, to give the other layer to this, I graduated with my degree. Part of my degree was a communication arts. So with that being said, I would take media criticism classes. I would take media and society classes. So I don't really watch a lot of movies, especially if the movies, how do they say, if they ain't talking about nothing. If the movie ain't talking about nothing, then I'm probably not gonna go see it. Like, I'm not, like what's the bear? They had that Cocaine Bear. Y'all remember that movie came out like a year ago? It's like I had no like nothing in me wanted me to see that movie. You know what I mean? So with that being said, I'm a bit of a movie snob. Like, I don't just watch nonsense. I don't subscribe to it. But with that being said, this movie was worth the watch. It was worth the watch. I felt some type of way in the beginning. I'm like, okay, they really pushing this interracial relationship thing, right? So then the man died. I'm like, no, I can't even be mad at him. So I thought that was a nice twist. So I mean, not a nice twist that he died, but just no. So, but with that being said, it was really, I was able to like not even think about that anymore, So that's I did appreciate that side of it. So with a movie, it's the writing, then it's the screenplay, and then it's the actual acting, and then it's the camera work, and so all of that kind of combines. And I thought that they really took their time and did this movie. A lot of stuff you kind of see just rush. You can kind of like, oh man, he had a different shirt on in the last scene. Like, oh, wasn't it just daytime? Like you just kind of see, because when you watch a movie, everything that you watch, and television as well, everything that you see is planned. So when they have a green car, they had a meeting about what color should this car be. Like it's not anything that's just thrown in there from the crumbs on the table to what color is the house. So all of that stuff is planned out, and I felt like they really took their time. They really were specific about what they were doing, and it really conveyed to the screen. I haven't really seen that many of her movies, but now I do want to go and watch a few more of her movies and see.
And when you say her,
Ava DuVernay.
Yeah, Ava DuVernay.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to go back and watch a few more of her movies and see if this kind of production went into it. So I thought it was a good movie. I would probably give it an A, not an A plus, because they're a white man. But I'll just but no, I was just playing. But I would definitely give it an A. I definitely appreciated it, and I appreciated the ministry for introducing me to it.
Wonderful.
Okay, so you brought up something that we're going to discuss a little bit later. I didn't want to interrupt you, but one of the themes that they brought out in the movie is that there were people in her family that had problems with her relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we will. Wanted to just bring up from the online audience, Elisa. Hey, Elisa. She said weaving all the timelines was masterful. And then she said race and women issues. I remember when she was trying to get a repair done, she really had to relate to him to actually get the service completed. So yes, we'll talk about that more. So now we've got that. For those of you that didn't see the movie at all, don't really know anything we're talking about, we're going to show the trailer for you just so you get a little bit of the movie so you'll have a greater understanding. Sit down.
It's her birthday.
Wait, today is your birthday?
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
It's Brett.
I miss the bell.
Yeah, I know.
Most relationships end. Friendships, romances, they break. You okay?
If you look closely, you'll find something tragic was happening.
Are you interested in writing something for us?
I don't do assignments anymore.
Yeah, well, you're a better writer than most people do anything. Have you heard the tapes?
No. Of what?
Stafford Police Department, this is Sean. Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. He looks like he's up to no good or something.
I want to be in the story. Really inside the story. And build a thesis that shows how all of this is linked.
I gotta be honest with you, I don't understand. I don't see it.
You go and write your stories. Folks need to know about this. You're trying to make sense of racism, but your thesis is flawed.
It was all lies. They knew we weren't inferior.
You don't escape trauma by ignoring it. You escape trauma by confronting it. I don't write questions.
I write answers.
All righty. A powerful movie. You can tell just from the trailer. There's gonna be some stuff in there. There's gonna be stuff in there. Definitely. So let's get into it a little bit and let's talk about the movie. We thought we would start with how the movie portrays her personal life during the time when she is starting to write this book, right? Because Ava DuVernay said she didn't want to do another documentary, right? She wanted to do a story. And so I think it lends itself really well to how Isabel Wilkerson writes. She is a narrative nonfiction writer. So it's not so much of writing just the history of, she's finding people and writing their story as she is putting on her premise of whatever the book is. So I thought it was interesting that she chose to do it that way. And I was just fascinated by what was going on in her personal life as she was writing. Any thoughts?
It's interesting the way you describe it as she's a narrative nonfiction writer,
Mhm.
and maybe that probably lended itself as to why there were no Oscar nominations, because it's in a very interesting category.
Mhm.
It's, even though she didn't want to do a documentary, it had the feel of documentaries in there.
Mhm.
So I'm going to give the Oscars a little bit of a pass tonight. That there were no nominations for Origin. A little bit.
You're the only one in the room.
So the way that you described it, I think, because people didn't know how to categorize it. They didn't know where to put it.
But that doesn't discount the fact that it was still a great film.
Oh, yeah,
And
I
just
agree.
based on what they saw on the screen should have motivated them to say, this deserves some category
It should
to
have
put
been.
it forward. Yes.
No. Not a one.
Nary.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Jada. Who else?
So I think for me again, it was the personal loss that she sustained. That she lost her husband, mother, and a cousin who was like a sister to her within, let's just say, an 18-month period of time, more or less. It also, I think, showed her vulnerability with how she dealt with things, and without being, I guess, stereotypical, there were things that she felt like that as a woman that she couldn't handle well, and that was part of how she met her husband, that she was having a difficult interaction with a vendor, and I think his name was Brett, came to her defense and straightened the guy out. Even after he passed and she had to handle their affairs and whatever she needed to do, there always seemed like there was some, that wasn't her strongest point, to be able to take care of those things.
That was a byproduct of how she was raised, because she was raised to stay in your place and be silent, and
Not to speak up.
Right. So how many African American households do they tell you when you go outside, watch how you speak to the Caucasian person? Don't speak up. And, so you stay, and her mother was, it's one point her mother said, Trayvon should have known not to answer that a certain way.
That if he had just
answered it,
he might still be alive.
So again, it's about how she was, to me, it was about how she was raised with this ideal of don't speak up, be quiet, stay back, don't be aggressive or forceful, don't make anybody,
don't upset white people.
Exactly, stay in your lane, don't, live your life so that they don't feel any way around you, any fear, right, that you don't make them afraid of you. So
I saw that differently.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the treatment that she received from the pest control guy as evidence of this through line of caste and race. Not that what you all saying is invalid. That is just the perspective that I saw, was that I think about why Ava DuVernay put that in the movie. Right. To help further along the idea of caste and race. And that's the way I saw it.
I can see
that.
that.
That's how I saw that.
I can see that.
Not as a matter of, she couldn't handle it. It's that this is how Black women are always treated, because we're on the lower level of this caste system.
We're discounted.
I don't disagree with you about that, and I don't mean to say anything different. I think that there's been some other women that they might have had a different reaction to him.
I mean, I
Because
think
I
both
feel
are
it is
valid.
tough.
I think both are valid. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that. I'm just saying that, there are different ways to look at the
Yeah.
same thing. Yeah.
But I think that for her, and because of the way that she was raised, that her strengths and her talents were elsewhere.
Right, right.
Because one of the things that they brought up through the movie is that her comebacks always were a day late.
right.
I should have done this and I should have done that. And yes, you're right that I think that she examined 3 different cultures or countries, but I think this theme of caste goes way beyond that with how we characterize gender roles, how we characterize roles with parents and children. Just throughout so much of our society, there's a pecking order, and there are certain things that it's you don't cross a line, or at least traditionally, there were certain lines that you didn't cross. That, like when I was growing up, if the teacher said Miss So and So said something, it was what the teacher said. You couldn't, even if the teacher was wrong or lying, they would not take your side. Whereas nowadays it's completely different.
So let's bring it up since Jeremy brought it up for us. The reaction to her interracial marriage in the movie. So what did we think about how that was portrayed and what it said?
I think it brings up a point that that for me at least, I see an issue in our society and amongst Black people, and I guess different people, about we care so much about what other people are doing that, if we see an interracial couple, somehow it offends us personally, where it doesn't have anything to do directly with us. And I know that there are people that are going to have different feelings about that, but it's like, why are we investing so much time and energy into what somebody else is doing instead of being focused on what we've got to do in our own business?
Okay. Reverend Sharon, I see you twisting your face up.
Here's the thing. I have in my own family, as you do, people in the family that have married outside of their race. Thank you, Afe. And the first reaction within the family is, we're Black women. Why did you choose a white woman? And it's always looked at as, is this love? And couldn't you have found love with a sister, that looks like you? And so from a Black woman's perspective, and having listened to other women in my family, it's seen as an insult that you would choose outside the race. And again, we've said this in this platform before, there are so many, or not so many, there are some African-American men that now feel that that's the thing to have, and that's the thing to go for, and they blatantly, publicly put us down.
But those people are idiots, though.
But that's not the point. That's not the point. It's what you hear, it's what you see, it's how they get on social media and talk about Black women, how we aren't anything. You had a Black mama, maybe she breastfed you, so it's like you came through her. You got Black sisters, Black aunties, Black grandmother. It's a lack of respect that I clearly see in some cases. I'm not speaking to those in my family, that did marry for love. I get that. You felt like this was who you chose, and we adapted to that when we found a common connection with her. However, initially it was like, okay, why are you bringing her up in here? That's the way that it is. It's a slap in the face. I can't, and it's not, I hear what you're saying, but it's seen as a slap in the face. I can't describe it any other way.
Can you talk about that from a truth perspective, though?
Yes, we are one. We all have the same blood. It runs the same thing. But on a human perspective, when you bring her into the house, it feels a certain way. It feels a certain way. As a Black woman, yes, it does. It feels a certain way.
Is this on?
It's on.
All right. Well, I definitely understand I definitely understand and see where the perspectives are coming from. But I do say that we should step back and look at the historical context of this, because in other races and other ethnicities or however you want to identify categories of people, there is a certain bond, and whether it's spoken or unspoken, where they don't date people outside of their race. Like whether it's arranged or whether it's just the circles that they are, the community circles that they're in, whereas we're not necessarily, I don't say we, but they don't have other races inside of their different communities. Whether that's they have their own grocery stores, they have their own churches, they have their own schools, they have the list goes on. But as far as us, we historically have never really had. I don't want to say unity. I mean, because we had unity. It's more so like the economic unity, I guess. Outside of the Black Wall Streets and the Greenwoods and the different places where there were Black communities that kind of had this sense of togetherness and exclusivity to a certain extent. So with that being said, I think that we have to kind of look at it kind of from that perspective to a certain extent. So.
So can I ask you a couple of questions?
Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I hear with what you said of the language of us and them. And, why is that such a thing that we look at us and them? I know that in certain cultures that's the way that things are looked at. But I'm not saying that we don't acknowledge the historic perspective, but why do we let that dictate the choices that we make in our lives?
Well, it's more so not from an individual level. Like I'm not saying from an individual level you should think about the historical, and then that's your choice is your choice. What they say, you can't help who your heart loves. So I thought it was beautiful the way that they went back and showed how that even happened in terms of him, I guess, stepping in, and then that also did, like I think we discussed earlier, kind of show the intersectionality of this. Not only is it a man, giving assistance to a woman who's not being quote unquote taken seriously or listened to, it's a white man, who
apparently had his eye on her.
Well,
because he knew exactly who she was.
Yeah, and so, but that's what I'm saying. Like, so, but if I don't know. I mean, maybe it's the Black AF that just kind of got me all just. Most this country was built for a white man. A white man that owned land. That's what the laws, the Constitution. That's what the origin of this is. So it was interesting to kind of see how that love kind of played out. Because to a certain extent, he was a savior. He kind of saving the day. And I guess it was a romantic aspect to it, but to get back to kind of what we were talking about in terms of someone dating outside their race, I think that the guardrails that exist in other communities don't really exist in our community. And when I say guardrails, I mean from a financial standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, like there are guardrails that exist in other communities that and for lack of a better word, we kind of willy nilly out here. Like it's kind of I'm gonna do what me and my family gonna do what we want to do. And it's a lot of that. But like I said, the context of the origin of that came from being enslaved, being not able to own land, not able to have life insurance, not able to. I mean, the list goes on. So when I look at us and having these perspectives, I think that a lot of the context of these perspectives comes from unspokenness in our community that still exists to this day.
And what you just said made me think about how with our history, in order for you to a certain extent, to move up in life, you had to adopt a culture of whiteness. So it's either get with somebody white, straighten out your hair, assimilate to that. So, and then with Black men, it just seems like you have TV and media telling you that white is beautiful. Then it's like it's just so much programming that I see it as that men, especially Black men, sitting in front of a TV Just like I feel like black women who sit in front of a TV and now they looking for this type of romance, or it's all this programming making you feel like what you might want to do is not necessarily what you should do if you want to have. It's like having that sports car or wanting these certain things just because you're told that this is right, but driving a Toyota is not right. Does that make sense?
And to kind of speak what you're saying, that's what I meant. Well, that's what I meant when I of course I see the comedic side of it, so that's kind of where I guess I came off. But that's what I meant when at the beginning I said, "Oh, not another one of these stories," because like I kind of said earlier, with television, with commercials, with any type of media, especially using the medium of our eyes, all of that is always planned. So so I don't know if y'all know, I've been seeing an influx of interracial relationships in commercials, in different. So
It seems like everywhere you look.
that's what made me like, oh, not again. Like here we go. Like and so that's why I said for the movie to transgress the way it did, it's like, wow, okay. I like how you really brought that together, and it really highlighted. Dang, Jeremy, you was about to judge this. You was about to yeah. So like that's what I definitely speak to that.
I just wanted to point out, I think that in terms of cast, that the love story gave us an example how the caste system prevents us from seeing the humanity in other people. His parents lived across the street. People are going to be gravitating towards folks who are nearby, who are near them. But the caste system has told us that you are separate.
Right.
It must remain that way.
And you must remain that way. And it prevents us from seeing the humanity. And her interaction with the maintenance guy, she focused on the humanity aspect of it. Like Jeremy said, everything in the film is purposeful. Ava purposely put that MAGA hat on him, but she purposely decided to focus on their human connection. She already had an experience with her husband, knowing that what he looked like does not necessarily represent who he is. And so she was able to look past the hat because she already had that experience with a white man, knowing that, seeing his humanity. And so she engaged in a humanistic way with the MAGA mechanic. And in turn had him just say, oh, respond in like. Mm-hmm. He had to respond in like. Mm-hmm. So she was no longer whatever a black woman was or has been presented in his mind. She's now a human being who had parents, who had a husband, and he could now relate. So I think, the purposeful aspect of that in the film that Ava put in there kind of helped us see where she was going in unfolding her ideas about caste.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, guys.
Piggybacking on the humanity, was the white guy that came to the house, was he a plumber? Or
yes, he was a plumber.
Okay, so yeah. So when he came in, he was just very dismissive, just gruff, and
standoffish.
And that struck me because she could have just kind of said, "Oh, here we go again, another one of them," thinking that I'm somehow less than because I'm a black woman and he's a white man. But she had the courage to again look to see where there are commonalities between the two of them. So what struck me about their interaction is that when she began to have a conversation with him, I think she asked him if he had kids or just, trying to connect with him somewhere. you could instantly see his heart begin to soften. I mean, it was immediate.
She said, my mother died.
Yeah,
And
it's like
we meant to get to this. We're selling the house. Is your parents alive?
Right.
And that was
And
what
it's
made
like
him connect with his own parents.
all of that, whatever he thought separated the two of them, just immediately melted away.
Right.
When she made that connection. So if you're sitting in a theater watching that, those were some of the tools that I was talking about that movie provided, so people can see that it is possible to bridge those gaps.
Right, but if you think about it, when she initially came in, she was irritated because of the situation, not because of him or the hat, but she was irritated, I've got to fix the house up, it's leaking, I got this, I got that. So she had a little irritation, but she pulled herself back, and you could visibly see that when she pulled herself back. So that in itself, as you're saying, Trina, yes, that's a lesson for us all to know that no matter what's going on around us, we can pull ourselves back, reframe the situation, and try it again in a different way.
Thank you so much for that, guys. We're going to move on. We spent a lot of time on this topic. So let's keep moving forward, because that's still just the first 5 minutes of the movie. It's deep. It is definitely deep. So let's shift our focus now on the first stop on her tour. Well, at least the first stop that was shown in the movie for her, which was going to Germany, right, to get that perspective. So what do you all think about that section of the movie and what was said about that?
Well, cinematically, for me, that was my favorite part of the film.
Okay.
Because it was so beautifully shot, and there was so much symbolism in what they focused on. I still see that those empty shelves, those white empty shelves, and I'm like, it just hit me. That along with the book burning was like, oh, it was like, I felt like I was being stabbed a little bit. So.
Yeah, and that quote, when you burn books, you end up burning man. That was really deep. That was really something. But 20,000 books burned. Over 20,000 books burned. And as a book lover, that hurt my heart. It's like, oh my God, how do you burn books? All of that knowledge, all that creativity, it's all burned up. It's all, gone away. You don't, it's like, wow.
And it also showed the courage of the German society to face what happened. Like they really face what happened artistically. They show this is what happened. And if we don't show what happened, we may be doomed to repeat it.
That's the Primo Levi quote. It happened, therefore it can happen again.
Well, I think for me, that part and a lot of the movie just more reflected the things that I see happening today, especially with this pushback against DEI and reframing, basically co-opting a message and reframing it so that it's something different than what it originally was meant to be to serve a purpose. We're seeing this, it may not be literally burning books, but we're seeing this with bans about what can be taught in classrooms or not. And the things that she discovered and that were brought out in the film are things that everybody in this country needs to know. It's so many people are afraid of you're going to make white people feel ashamed of being white. That's not what this is about, or at least not for me. It's not, and for a lot of people. It's about understanding where we came from so we don't repeat the same mistakes. But there is, and I'm getting a little bit beyond the movie now, but it just reminds me that you have people in control that have an agenda, and they're going to exclude certain information to advance other ideas that support their agenda, not necessarily give you the entire truth.
What do you think about, anybody, the idea that the when they were at the dinner party and the German woman pushed back on her premise, telling her that her thesis is flawed, right? Because what did she say? Slavery was rooted in subjugation, whereas the Holocaust was about extermination. So what do you all think about that section?
I mean, I think it's the common refrain that we hear anytime you talk about enslavement or this particular kind of enslavement. You hear that all the time, and so what did you say, Reverend Dre? The Olympics, the
Trauma Olympics.
The trauma Olympics. I think that's a trap. That's a trap to get into, and it's almost like she needed to be able to say that so that Isabel could refute it. And in the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So that need to be it need to be able to be said up front in the movie so that it could be refuted
throughout the
rest of the film.
Right.
But I think that's a that may have been something to stage up what's in the film. But I think that this is a very real thing, that each group of people sees their experiences as being unique, and to some extent that's true. But that prevents them or puts a barrier up from seeing the commonality with the suffering or the mistreatment of other people. That, yeah, it may have been about the Jews, that it was extermination, but, you know, as she pointed out in the film, we can't even count the number of people that lost their lives with the slave trade and through slavery.
There is no number.
Yeah, there is no number. It's an unknown number. But it, to some extent, puts a barrier up that my experience was different than yours, so we can't quite relate to solve this problem because my problem is different from yours.
But not only different, it was worse.
It was worse.
It was worse than yours. So
you could be
put
casting the pain.
Yeah.
Yes.
You could basically casting the pain because they try to because they were exterminating us. Our pain is worse than them subjugating you and holding you hostage.
Or at least that it's different.
Yeah, it's different. So my pain is worse than your pain. So we're going to cast which is more important than the other.
And the Jewish community always focuses on lest we forget. So they're constantly retelling their story.
But we're not supposed to.
We're not supposed to. And because if we do, suddenly we're always victims. How come black people are always slaves? There is no comparison cinematically between the number of Holocaust films and documentaries done versus the number of African enslavement films and documentaries that have been done. No comparison. They're constantly telling their story over and over and over again because they function from lest we forget. It will happen again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jeremy?
So I don't know if it's synergy or it's just a synchronicity going on right now, but y'all didn't find it interesting that we just read a whole book on history and we didn't hear nothing about the Germans using United States Jim Crow laws to start the Holocaust? Like,
I think that wasn't the purpose of that book, the Black AF history book. That wasn't his purpose.
Well, so I'm not saying that wasn't his purpose, but it's you know it was interesting to hear that in the movie because it gave me a perspective of, man, I thought I just read all history to a certain extent with America. And it's like, oh, I just read the U.S. history. Like, this ain't even, like, the extent, you know, so it's like, wow, like, I just found that very, like, interesting. Like, I mean, just, to speak frankly, that was the moment that my intellect was, like, sizzling. Because I'm like, what's she doing in Germany? Like, what is this going? Because like I said, I didn't know nothing about this movie, so I'm just watching it. And you know, of course, the Trayvon, that's heartstrings. You know, so I'm not really processing it up here what I'm watching from the beginning of the movie. And so when it went to Germany, I feel like that's when the movie went to another level intellectually. And it's like, if you're not following what's going on here in the bigger picture, then you're not gonna see some of the stuff that's happening while she's over there. So yeah, I definitely thought that it was worthwhile to tell that story because I didn't know the extent of burning books, and we kind of just in history it's just like, yeah, now it was this bad guy named Hitler, and he just like stood up one day and was like, yeah, we don't like Jewish people, and you kind of go with that, like I don't know how it happened, but it happened, so you just kind of roll with that. So it was really interesting to hear that part of history and to hear how the things that were going on here on the human level were being echoed abroad. So
I feel you on that because I was a little angry when I learned about that in the beginning of the film. I'm like, how come I don't know this? I've watched countless Holocaust films and documentaries. I haven't been to the Holocaust Museum, which is the #1 visited museum in this country. I've never heard that story. How come that was? It's like we were being robbed of certain historical events that are important in our story.
They've been robbed of a whole lot of historical events in our story. That's the truth. Exactly, period. So.
Well, one can speculate that would not put the United States in a very nice light if that were part of what was, talked about, how they came up with this scheme of how they were going to do things. But
the United States have done a lot of things to even fueling wars by supplying guns and we don't the American citizens don't know how much we contribute to a lot of wars for political and financial reasons.
yeah, and these are things that I'm glad that she brought out some of these things in the film. But this is the type of thing that I think that everybody needs to know. It doesn't. It's a shame that the movie did not do better in the box office than it did. They didn't have the same distribution that if this was Fast and Furious 18 or 53 or whatever would get.
But we know why, right? Or is that a scapegoat? Is that a scapegoat?
Well, I mean, there are a variety of reasons for it, but I think that I think that on being a con level, there is still a level of ignorance about what it is that will sell and what people will go out to see. That people have made up in their minds, the people that control these things, this is not going to make us money, so we're not going to put money behind it. And, I know that Tyler Perry has become very controversial as of late with things that he's done or not doing, but he was somebody that proved Hollywood wrong about what Black people are willing to pay for and come out and do, despite whatever limitations were put on him. So, there are these structural things, and I think that that's what she brings up in the film about this thing with caste, that caste is structural to keep people in a place, and that there are things in place that will prevent either information from getting out or whatever it is that one or two people may get out, but the majority of them are going to be kept in, and that's going to keep, everybody comfortable and make society work, that everything works right because everything's in its place.
So I just wanted to include our online audience. They've been saying a whole lot. A lot of it has been co-signing a lot of what has been said. I just want to make sure that they get their chance for their words to be heard. So they were talking about why the difference between slavery and Holocaust was being said. And they said it was to set the context for caste. It was said to make folks think. Someone said suppression is the common experience for both. So they were agreeing with some of the things that were being said on here again. Someone said, the less folks know this movie, this movie would provide so much aha moments, questions from folks, for folks and different things like that. So yeah, a lot of people were co-signing and pretty much agreeing or stating their their opinions as well. Thank you so much, guys. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. So let us keep moving.
Well, I want to respond a little bit. So I get what you're saying, Reverend Terry, in terms of, I just want to kind of get a clarification on, you said the ignorance. Is this the ignorance of movie studio executives? Or are you saying, so you're saying, okay, so I feel that, but then I would challenge it to maybe go a step further to say the ignorance is a scapegoat, because these people know what sells. I mean, that's why they got their job. That's why, the ball keeps rolling. You know what I mean? That's why the ball keeps. So to speak to the Tyler Perry thing, the Tyler Perry situation is a bit of an anomaly, but when you kind of peel it back and you think about the timeline of what he was doing doing the stage plays, and the connection to Hollywood would be, and I want to, they say beat a dead horse, but the whole man in the dress, the whole black man in the dress. So that was already something that was a thing in Hollywood. So they weren't necessarily behind him doing it, but then when it got to a certain level, and he still is reaping the benefits of what that perspective of these studio executives are. So, he's made his money, he's done his thing on his own, but he's still pushing that narrative, to a certain extent. And so that's kind of what I say when it comes to this movie being financed, being produced. There were some corporations, I believe, that helped to fund this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of just the American public, this movie isn't good for business. This movie isn't, like, us being educated isn't the best thing for capitalism. Because just in the interactions of capitalism, you have to have a caste system to a certain extent. You have to have, you have to have the winners, you have to have the losers, you have to have, that, and that's just capitalism. That's what we have adopted. So, with that being said, I do think that there is something to say about this movie not being promoted and not being marketed to everyone. Because after I left this weekend, I've been telling all my friends, I'm like, you seen this movie Origin? Don't nobody know about this movie. Don't know, like, well, I don't want to say nobody, but
No, you're right.
And these are these are worldly people. These are employed people. These ain't people who just don't know what's going on. So I think that there was a certain audience that this movie is for, and I don't think that they wanted this movie to be as big as hopefully this movie can get. So
I think when you're talking about the film industry, I think it's important that people understand it. Look at it as the restaurant industry. Tyler Perry selling McNuggets.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Michelin star restaurant.
Yeah.
This is meal here. So, really can't get involved in this. Film and television is all about advertising. They're selling potato chips and vehicles and automobiles. So, film is not an entity that was built to educate. Yeah. It's selling something.
Because Burger King, what, they gonna have a cast burger? Yeah, come on, we got the cast burger for the Origin movie.
Yeah, movie theaters make money off of popcorn and sodas. That's why it's so high.
A small is $10.
So, we can't go down that rabbit hole of putting Tyler Perry in this. He ain't in this.
Right. I think my only point with this, and I don't want to beat a dead horse with it, is that I see with the education system, for example, because things are not taught, that people have an ignorance about what's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And that they think that what their point of view is right, and there's nothing to, there's nothing to challenge it.
Mm-hmm. I know we're moving on from the German perspective, but it's important to know that because Germany is willing to face its own history, that they are now reflecting that how we need to start facing our own history. It is required teaching for every German student to learn about enslavement and African enslavement.
I don't see that happening in this country.
No.
It's not. But it's happening in Germany.
I get that, but I don't see that happening.
They know more. They know more about the exodus of Black folks from the South to the North. It's part of their curriculum because they went through this experience.
Well, what's interesting is from the Indian perspective, the Dalit professor, Dr. Ambedkar, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, that wrote the Indian Constitution. His statue is in a cage, yet to prevent it from being vandalized. And that's just crazy to me. So that's almost...
And he wrote the Constitution, right?
Right. He wrote the Constitution. His statue is caged, bless you. His statue is caged up to prevent it from vandalism. So that's like in the face of the very thing that it's supposed to promote. So what is it saying to the Dalit people? You know, every time you look at your constitutional writer, he's in a cage. He's in a cage, his statue's in a cage, and look at what your life is like. So that to me is just like, it's interesting to me as a country, that Indian perspective on that constitutional writer and how his statue is caged up.
So are we gonna get to the cuckoo part? Are we gonna get to that?
Did we get
That,
to it?
we're in it now.
We have moved into the Indian part now.
That was the most moving part of the movie. That thing just, my heart just, you know.
So
No, it's
oh, is it on?
You're good.
Okay. So that scene where, okay, first of all, I had no idea that was even happening.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first response when I saw that image of there were two men and he was just immersed in this waste, and I was, so my first response, I had a gag response, and I said, oh my God, there's no way I couldn't. But then what the other piece that struck me was the way in which his friend or the other man that was there, how he so tenderly wiped the waste from his eyes and his mouth, and it's like, how do you even find it in your spirit, your soul, to offer such tenderness in the midst of such horror? It was just awful. I couldn't. That was so difficult.
Yep, I agree with you, Trina. That to me was a very powerful scene in the movie, but I took it in almost as if his worker was anointing him and blessing him before he went to do this work that no one else wanted to do. That every touch of his hand on his body was just blessing him as he went to do this
unthinkable.
Yes, this job, this thing that he had to do, his entire body immersed in excrement. And just the way that he came up to the top with just his head and then his eyes open from the excrement, that thing just moved me in such a way through my body. It's like you talk about a movement of spirit. It moved me in a way. It was a tender moment, but it was I have no words for it.
What got me is that there's an expectation that somebody should have to do that, and that it's okay.
And that it's continuing to this day. It's not from olden days. It's still happening.
I was just touched by something that Trina just said, that, she couldn't. What I think all of the stories, from every perspective, whether it's the hierarchy, the higher person on the cast or the lower person on the cast, because it was done by humans, any of us can do it. And that's what we need to understand. If you were in that situation, Trina, you would do it. And all of us have the ability or the capability to do good and do not good.
Right.
And that's the understanding that we are all, that's what we don't understand, that we are all one.
Mm-hmm.
We're still looking at stuff like, I couldn't, but you actually could. If you had no choice, you could. There are things that people in other countries look at the enslaved people and the people of Jim Crow. I mean, there are things that we look at and we say, I couldn't, but you could.
Right.
I bet you could.
Exactly.
If you were in that situation, you could.
But you would. Get this guy out of here, man.
You know, you could, you would have no choice, or you would, not be killed, not be here. But all of this is part of the human condition. And I think that's part of the things that she was trying to explain, that all of it is part of the human condition. All of us need to be able to understand that it can happen, it is happening, and we all can fall prey to any of it.
Indeed.
I don't think that I felt that it couldn't. I think it was more of a. It's, how you just. It's like how is this even happening? And just when I think about the Martin Luther Kings and the all of our civil rights leaders that came before us and the things that they endured. It's like, Jesus, just the things that people have endured so that we can enjoy some of the things that we're enjoying to this day. So to see that, not to say that I wouldn't if I was put, if I had to, but so I guess out of that came how incredibly blessed we are. That to this point we haven't had to be put in in situations where we had to endure something so horrific. But yeah, it was just very difficult.
But that brings up the point about Martin Luther King feeling a certain way when he went to India in 1959 in that Ebony article, when he was called an untouchable. He was like, oh, how dare they? I'm not untouchable. When he thought about it, he was like, well, heck yeah, I am an American untouchable. Yes, I am. So that's an interesting, juxtaposition of that way of thinking about it.
So to get back to the pool of the matter, that was so I appreciated the way that the movie played out, in terms of the screenwriting, because there were moments where that was foreshadowed, like that was kind of like foreshadowed, because you like, I think she spoke about it a couple different times, and it's like I didn't think that they was gonna show that. And so when they was oiling the man, I'm thinking, oh, they about to pray, they about to, they about to have some kind of, or really, I thought it was gonna be like on some, he got a broom, you know what I'm saying? He got a broom, he got a little shovel, and he just got to work in the.
When you talk about having to clean the toilets, it's like you're thinking.
Yeah, like you know, thinking. So that's why it's like it's being foreshadowed, and the part of me was like, I wonder what that looked like, And then when I saw it, it was like, oh, I don't wonder what that looked like. It was one of those things you kind of can't take back, like you can't unsee that. So so yeah, and it's like I said, everything in movies is planned out. So then it led to the question of, is this, because it was so powerful of a moment that you forget that this is a movie, and that could have been chocolate pudding. You know what I'm saying? Like it could have been just
that was real.
That's what I'm saying.
Real.
That's why it's like, whoa, like it was another, like it took the movie to kind of another level in terms of pulling at the heartstrings.
Right, these were people that actually do that work.
Yeah, but and then it's like the context of it was, because even in America, we have people that are homeless, people that are indigent, people that are, but they ain't doing that. You know what I'm saying? It's like we have built a society to the. Well, I mean, I know some people can do that for employment, but I'm talking about in terms of like without a suit, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Because I know there's people that work with septic tanks and people that, but they usually go in there with full protection, suit, mask, goggles, all of that. I don't. I mean, yeah, I don't know what that is. I mean, I know what it is, but I don't know. I don't see people jumping in.
They don't show you that, just like we didn't know about India.
We can't hear anything you're saying, Ife.
Yes, Reverend Drea.
Thank you.
Chicken farming. It's the same way we don't see what was happening in India. It's the same way they don't show you what goes on with your food. And what goes on with your food, especially with chickens, is somewhat as similar, especially the stench, the waste, and the disease. And they have to go in there. They're not suited up. And all of those animals are in there like poop. Trust me. And you can watch a documentary or I'll send you one.
And only a certain
people,
group, certain
group of
people.
people are doing it, which are the Mexicans, what they trying to kick out. But nobody want that job.
Right.
Don't nobody want that job. But you trying to kick out Mexicans, but they're the ones who's doing it. And that's a caste system in itself because they don't believe they should be here. But they're willing to do the jobs that
none of us want to do.
None of us want to do.
Do the quote for us. Put it on the screen. Okay.
So somebody want to read that?
I can't see it.
I can't.
Definitely can't see it.
Caste and race are neither synonymous nor mutually exclusive. They can and do exist in the same culture and serve to reinforce each other. Race, in the United States, is the visible agent of the unseen force of caste. Caste is the bones, race the skin. Race is what we can see, the physical traits that have been given arbitrary meaning and become shorthand for who a person is. Caste is the powerful infrastructure that holds each group in its place.
So, having, read, that's a powerful quote. Really, really says a lot about what she's trying to say. The question that came up is, are we in this country, and we as a Black community, are we able to engage with this idea, this thesis that she has of caste? Can we see past racism to the caste system? Anybody?
Or are we willing to see past?
Talk amongst yourselves. Anybody have something they want to share?
I wonder how much of a difference that it would make. I wonder how much of a difference it would make for most people, or would they still rationalize it that whatever it is that happened to our ancestors was because of their race rather than anything else?
Gotcha.
So as I sit here and think about this, I see the caste system in America is a financial situation, being the bones, because it's the haves and the have-nots. Yes, the race is what divided us in formation of this place. And what we learned in that other book about how they were able to physically set us apart. But now it's really financial. I mean, what's happening with our financial system, we really got to pay attention, because there's the haves and the have-nots. I've had the opportunity to travel outside of this country, and there is no real middle class outside of this country. There's like truly the haves and the have-nots. But in this country, we still have that a middle ground, and we're quickly losing it. And for me, that's how I see this quote just describing the differences between caste and race.
Well, wasn't it always about finances? Wasn't it always about?
In the caste system, no. They were born into those situations.
No,
right, but the caste system was set up so that you'd have one group on top of the other. If one group would benefit from the efforts or the misery of another group.
So the thing that, the thing that at least I've learned is there wasn't always racism. it was always casteism. And that would be because the haves or the have-nots, as you put it, the wealthy kings, and there's the people. There were, and even though there were people maybe in the middle who served the king, racism was more so just about coming here to be able to then say, okay, we're going to snatch these people and then make them and try and make it make sense amongst the other people why we can make them slaves. But outside of that, it really always has been about finance and about the wealthy and the have-nots, or the people, the poor. I just see that racism is relatively new, is what I say. Casteism has always been the case. It's always been those who look down on the others, and we need to always keep it that way. And that's also capitalism. But now you add racism in there, and especially in the United States, because they found a way to even make it stronger with racism. But casteism has always been the case, and it's always been about finances and who has money and who doesn't, and how do we keep them apart.
Anyone else? Jeremy?
To speak to, I guess, the origin of how I've come to the conclusion I've come to is to say that the caste system when I was in school was presented alongside like the feudal system, like, and it was something that was basically in England, something that, you know, they used to be like this. They had peasants, they had, you know, different levels of society, and that's how it's just presented. So to see this movie and to see it beautifully portrayed and conveyed the way it was definitely has identified that there is a difference between racism and this caste system structure. And I think that we need to do more education on what this is to, you know, our community. I mean, just in general, you know, I think that this could be a whole subset of the education system to, you know, be teaching this or whatnot. So yeah, so I think this movie definitely helped me to differentiate from the two.
Do we have any more comments from the people online?
I'll let you know. I got you. I got you. So let me see if I could adjust my question, because it wasn't a question on whether we know the difference between caste and racism, or if there is a difference between caste and racism, because of course we know there is. But racism is such a shadow over this country, this particular country. I'm not talking about anybody else. This particular country and what we do and how we look at things and the lens through which we view everything. Can we see past that? And does it make a difference if we see past that to help handle or deal with the challenges that we all face in this country? I don't know if I asked the question differently.
I think you did. I personally, at least not with what I see right now, don't think we can. I think that the idea of racism is so rooted in people's minds that either you have people that see everything in terms of race, and you have another group of people that try to deny that race has anything to do with it. And this is what I meant about the ignorance, Jeremy, that you've got a group of people that because they have not been, the South did a very good job of reframing the whole Civil War thing. That if you look back, if you can find copies of the old newspapers, you'll see what they wrote and what it was really about. But because the messaging was changed, that this wasn't about slavery, this was about states' rights, and this was about us being able to govern ourselves. And that thought, you know, you have people now that see things differently and they're sincere about it, that they don't see it. And so they make decisions based on this lack of evidence or lack of knowledge. Yeah, there are a group of people that know what's going on and know how they're playing people off against one another. But if you get enough people that support the lie, you keep telling it over and over again, it becomes truth, at least in those people's minds. And they get manipulated without really understanding why.
I think one of the things Isabel was trying to really raise was that to look at everything through a race perspective is just lazy.
And limiting.
That there's more to that. If you just say it's all race, then that gets you nowhere. It doesn't really get you to the root of what is really happening in all of our societies, all across the globe. Mm-hmm. That it's really about who's on top, who's at the bottom, and why does there need to be a top and a bottom? It's that old Lyndon Johnson quote: "If you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket." Mm-hmm. Hell, give him somebody to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you. Mm-hmm. That it really is about caste. It really is about these levels that we put on people so that we can feel better about ourselves, take advantage of other people, keep a certain group on top. It's all about finances. It's all about capitalism.
But what's behind that, which very clearly is this idea of that it's not enough. So I've got to take from me and mine to make sure we've got. So it's scarcity. It's a scarcity mindset, and it's also, I can put somebody under my foot economically, socially, in any other kind of way to make me feel better about myself because I really don't know who I am in the first place. So if I can identify myself as being better than them, that name, that title alone does so much for who I am as a person. That's all I need, because that's all I have to hold on to. Because they can't be similar to me. I got to be more greater and bigger and better and whatever it is, stronger than them. So that's an identifier for some people that don't have no other means of identifying themselves.
Well, here's the interesting thing that I had learned at one point, and I may not have the numbers exactly right. The Civil War, we have the impression that all white people owned slaves. The truth is only about 20% of the white people owned slaves. And the people that got shipped off to fight the war were the more common people. It wasn't the people, just like nowadays with the wars that we do, the rich people don't send their kids or rarely send their kids to fight the wars. It was the more common person that got out and fought the Civil War than it was the slave owners. They had the more common white people had more in common with the slaves than they did with the slave owners, excepting for skin color. And that was that lie that they perpetuated, that because of your skin color, you're better. Hence the quote that you just had, that if you have even the most poor white man, that you make them think that they're better than the richest colored man, you can still pick his pocket.
Mm-hmm. So let's move to the last story that was told. I was good mostly, right? But I had to make sure I ate a lot of popcorn during this time. Otherwise, y'all would have heard me boo-hooing crying in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
And it was about the story of the young man who was on the baseball team, and they won. I'm sorry, young child. Young child who was 9 years old. They won the game, and then the coach wanted to take them to swimming and have some hot dogs and stuff like that. And that's when we saw the illustration, the symbolism of purity, versus what's the other thing? Pollution. Purity versus pollution. So tell me about that. I know we were all traumatized by it. I know we all felt that. So we don't have to talk about the traumatization because we know we were all traumatized. But let's talk about the symbol, what it meant, what it was saying in the movie, and how it related to Cass.
I don't see any way of not talking about the trauma, because that's how it triggered the childhood, at least for me, being African and American and coming back to the United States and feeling like an outsider. And even just with the little boy, he just wanted to have fun. He wanted to enjoy spending time with his friends, and then he couldn't get in the pool because of his skin. And then when they finally decided to let him in the water, he could not move.
He couldn't touch the water.
He never got in the water.
Excuse me, my apologies.
He was on the raft.
When he was able to even be close enough to the water, he still had a barrier between him and the water. Mm-hmm. And then he could not move because he was in so much fear that if he touched the water, he would pollute it. He contaminated. Mm-hmm. Like my existence is a problem.
Yeah, that was sad. But the thing that the coach, the idea of the coach wanting him to have the experience of the other boys on the team, that is almost like a white savior complex. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make this better for you. So I'm going to take you and make sure you have this experience of getting in the water like everybody else has had. But then the coach and none of the other adults stopped it when they realized, because they had to know at some point, reality, this child could not physically get in the water with the water on his skin. When they saw the barrier of the raft between the child and the water, someone should have stopped it. But in his desire to do the right thing, he put this child in the way of this experience that this child had to go through, because the coach wanted to do the right thing by the child, but it was traumatizing to the child, but he was still intent to do the right thing.
You know, I'm not quite sure about that, Reverend Sharon. Well, there are a couple of things about the coach that you really don't know about. The first thing is that he had Al Bright playing on the team in the first place. It's like you were there in whatever that community is, one would think that you would know. First of all, he shouldn't have been playing with them based on he shouldn't have been playing with them, period. So he didn't see that that was a problem. And so there was some sort of a disconnect with him and the rest of his society.
And that's what I'm saying to you. The coach had a disconnect.
Yeah, but you're talking about him trying to be the white savior. I don't think in his mind that he thought that he was saving this black child. He thought that he was treating him like everybody else because he didn't see the difference in them.
But that's what I'm saying to you. His ideal of thinking that he was doing the right thing, that it should have been that the child was allowed to get into the pool. That's an attitude that a lot of people have. It shouldn't be that way. There should be no segregation. There should be no separation. There should be equal treatment. There should be equal education. That idea of them thinking that they can do the right thing, sometimes inherent in that, because he didn't go to full distance.
Well, he wasn't.
I don't care. Then he could have said, no, this child will not get on the raft. The same way he allowed the child to get on the raft, he could have said, no, I'm not going to subject him to that. But my point is that sometimes in trying to do the right thing and trying to recognize the inequalities, you do more damage.
I think to Reverend Sharon's point, it's like, I mean, it's almost like you have to have, it's like somebody saying to me, I had a friend of mine a while back tell me, well, I don't see color. I'm like, well, what?
You blind?
Right. So you don't see me.
Mm-hmm.
How can you look at me and not see color? So you dismiss my whole history. You dismiss me if you don't see color. So it's like unless you have a level of awareness about somebody's plight or somebody's story. So like Reverend Sharon said, that friend thought she was somehow, I don't know, saving me. I don't see color. Mm-hmm. Well, that's worse. That's worse.
I don't see you.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And that was also a way for her thinking that she could connect with you. Right. I don't see color. I just see you, Trina.
Me, I'm not racist. I don't even see color where you just went, you really went left. Then you know what I'm saying. So I see the point where he actually did more harm because he thought if he just dismissed all that other stuff, he was aware of it. I think, but he thought, well, I'm just going to push it aside.
I question how aware he was of it because it just seems to me that he shouldn't have taken. Number one, the boy shouldn't have been on the team. And number two, if he was on the team, he should have known better than to take him down to the team.
I disagree with you.
You may disagree with me about it, but I wondered what was going through his mind because surely he should have known that was going to be a problem.
That was the whole point. His knowing. He took the child because he was a black child. He belonged in the team. He asked to be in the team. I see no problem. Let this child be on the team. Yes.
So what I'm trying to figure out is because I see both perspectives, and that's where I usually get in trouble with people. Reverend Terry's talking about the law of the land and him basically understanding as a white man during that time, black kids weren't supposed to be mixed with, shouldn't be playing with white kids. Also saying that because he brought them there, then he's probably not realizing it because he's allowed him into the team. His consciousness is not thinking of him as, okay, he shouldn't be able to experience this because he also gets to have fun with these white kids. So he should also be able to have fun with these white kids at the pool. But at the same time, I get what you're saying as far as saying that, okay, he brought him there and then saw this and then allowed him to get into this pool with these people, knowing that he really wasn't having fun. He should have stopped the whole experience. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the duality in our humanness and wanting to be able to respect our humanness, but at the same time have that freedom of spirit. And that's the challenge in life. We always aren't spiritual. A lot of times we tend to be in our humanness, and then it's like, how do you?
I do believe that he was very much in his humanness. There's no doubt about that. What I kind of disagreed with some of the premise that you made, Reverend Terry, is that you saying that he shouldn't have had him on the team.
Well, I'm saying.
Let me finish. Let me finish. And yes, in that society, they wanted to keep people separate, but he controlled the team. Right. He didn't control the pool, but he controlled the team. So he could do whatever he wanted on the team. So if he wanted to have the little black boy, he could do that because he was the law of that land. Mm-hmm. So he can do that if he wanted to. But he couldn't do that at the pool because he wasn't the law of the land at the pool. But yet and still, he wanted to save the young boy from having to sit out there. Mm-hmm. It's the same as, I've seen and I've heard about the quote unquote good white friend when there's a police situation. Well, I'll handle it. I'm gonna take care of it. And the black person's like, no, because you're gonna do that, and I'm still gonna bear the brunt. Mm-hmm. That little boy still bared the brunt. That little boy still had to suffer. He had another death by having to experience that. It was bad enough he had to be but he was used to that, right? He was used to the separation. But then having to go to the pool and sit on the raft and have all those eyes on him and everybody watching him. He didn't even get in the pool, and the man there, threatening his life, all that kind of stuff. That was a kind of death that he did not have to deal with if the coach wasn't trying to be a savior to him. That's what I mean.
I don't disagree with you about the effect that it had on Outright with him. For me, it would have been better if he hadn't gotten in the pool. But I want you to think about something. This wasn't just that one coach, because the teams didn't play in Little League in a vacuum. There were a bunch of other teams that played against them that said that it was okay for that little black boy to be there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So on some level, in his mind, he thought that it didn't matter. I don't know what exactly was going through.
I don't believe that. It was 1951. I don't believe that.
According to the news reports, I've started reading articles about the whole Al Bright pool story, the parents are the ones that intervened and said, no, he needs to be able to be in the pool with the rest of the children. And then, so they brought him in, and then a supervisor, a pool supervisor, said, okay, we're going to let him in the pool, but he can't touch the water because those people are unclean.
Okay, so which parents was it that that intervened?
I don't know which parents. They just said the parents intervened.
So that must have been the
to allow him to
that,
get in the pool.
That must have been the parents that were there at the pool then.
At the pool.
Okay, so the white parents. But
I'm
I'm going back to something different. You're talking about him being the law of the land. On his team, that may be true, but there's a whole league that allowed that boy to play.
Okay.
Knowing that that was not acceptable for their culture. So it's like, and I'm not saying that maybe he did have some that I'm going to save this kid kind of a thing, but the point of the matter is that they allowed him to play in the first place and make him feel like he was a part of the team.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because it's not where Savior in that respect, Terry. It was Savior as in this little black boy is not like those other little black boys that I've seen. This little black boy, he's smart. He can play because how many times throughout history do you hear you don't speak like other black people? Wow, you are so articulate. Wow, I didn't know you understood this from history. Exactly. Wow, you don't look like another. Wow, I didn't understand that. And you're from where? That's historically been substantiated.
Okay,
That's what it is.
So are you not doing the same thing that you're taking a broad group of circumstances and applying it to one where you really don't know all the details?
No, you know what? I don't know all the details. I'm surmising. And in this discussion, I'm allowed to surmise.
Okay.
All righty. So, I just want to say something from the online people, then I'll let you go, Jeremy. Marie asked, "Did you know that the man Isabel interviewed, the actor that the white actor that was interviewed as Albright's friend, was an actor on the set that has actually experienced this event in his life?" Yeah, he wasn't. That was a spontaneous conversation. It wasn't scripted because he had that experience as a child. So they just sat and had the conversation. So yes, some of us didn't know that, but thank you for reminding us, Marie, and so that we can point that out for everybody. Okay, Jeremy.
Well, one thing I thought about, it kept remarking about how hot it was. And I'm thinking this little boy on this plastic just floating around the pool, can't get in the water. That had to be a way worse experience than just sitting outside the gate. So it's like, I thought about that side of it. And then the other part of it where if the coach really was trying to, I don't want to say make a statement, but he could have jumped in the water with the boy and showed everybody that I'm not dead, I'm not sick, I'm not, so I think that would have been a little bit more impactful, in hindsight for him instead of the whole, floating him around the pool. I think that the coach, that would have been way more impactful, I think, than what they did, but that was the situation. So.
Well, you bring up something that I think goes a little bit outside of the movie, but I was watching something. Emmanuel, can you check the heat and cut it down a little bit? Because it's getting kind of hot up here.
Yeah. It's getting hot in here.
So she was having this interview with some Indian people, and they brought up one of the things that we didn't talk about really was there was a photograph that they showed in Germany of all these people giving, the Heil salute. And there was one man that had his arms crossed, and they talked about that. And the thing with the conversation was that if you ask people would they have saluted or would they have crossed their arms, that most people nowadays would say to you, "I'd have crossed my arms." Her point was that it really should be, "I would like to think that I would have crossed my arms." But the likelihood is that if you were there with all the pressure and the societal norms, you wouldn't have crossed your arms. You'd have done the salute, even if you didn't believe in it. And I think that that's part of what goes on with this, that people pass the buck on responsibility. I wasn't the one making the decisions. It's the law. I can't do anything about it. Oh, it's just the way that it is. Yes, it might have been more impactful if he had gotten into the pool, but he still also was a product of his time. And by him doing that, even if he didn't believe that he was going to be somehow impure, the rest of the people around him did believe that. And being outcast within your own group of people is something that most of us are not willing to go through.
Which is interesting because we live that way every day.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that expression, oh, I wouldn't want to be Black. That's true. Most people would not want to be Black, but that's our life. You know, so that's where it comes to empathy and understanding. That's that line that they don't want to cross to see what it's like to live as a Black person, to live as someone who is subjugated to somebody else, to live as somebody in a caste system. So when she says that that race and caste are not synonymous, but they support one another, and that they, you know, that it's part of what is, you can clearly see that. But that line, people don't want to cross that line to understand that there's a connection.
So let's round this out and finish this up. With the end of the movie, she gives the house analogy, which I think is very instructive for us, especially in this country. She says, America is an old house. We can never declare the work over. Wind, flood, drought, and human upheavals batter a structure that is already fighting whatever flaws were left unattended in the original foundation. When you live in an old house, you may not want to go into the basement after a storm to see what the rains have wrought. Choose not to look, however, at your own peril. The owner of an old house knows that whatever you are ignoring will never go away. Whatever is lurking will fester whether you choose to look or not. Ignorance is no protection from the consequences of inaction. Whatever you are wishing away will gnaw at you until you gather the courage to face what you'd rather not see. And I thought that was a fabulous analogy with how things are unfolding, especially right now in the United States. Any thoughts?
That line, whatever you are wishing away will gnaw at you until you gather the courage to face what you would rather not see. For me, it's honestly a question of, for how many people is it gnawing away at? You know, on both sides, on all sides of the conversation. You know, is it gnawing away at those that feel that they're in a caste system, gnawing away at them to the point that they're ready to do something and to do something different, to take a different action? And is it gnawing away at the other people who are, you know, putting people under their foot in many different ways? Is it gnawing at them, or are they just saying it is what it is? You know, I didn't own slaves. You know, my mama didn't own slaves. You know, is it really gnawing at them? That's where I'm questioning. Is it really gnawing at us?
It doesn't feel like it is. I mean, how we see things playing out in this country, whether it's gnawing at them or not, it doesn't. There's no demonstration that it is. I mean, just in this whole, I don't even want to get into it, but this whole election thing is like, that we are even back in this place is beyond me. So, is it gnawing? Is it really gnawing at us? It doesn't seem so.
I believe that it is gnawing at us on a subconscious level. So maybe not consciously for everybody. Of course, for some people it is gnawing. I feel my hip every day. Some of us it is gnawing, no question. But I think for everybody it's happening at a subconscious level. And part of that is because of the way things are happening. You know, you hear that no empire lasts forever. Right? the United States has done a good job of lasting as long as it has.
But it's
And I
very
think
young.
the foundation is being gnawed at because we have not decided to face all that we have experienced, endured, seen, or participated, benefited from, whatever, that it is gnawing at our foundation. It is definitely in that respect, yes.
You say gnawing, but that line above it, whatever is lurking will fester whether you choose to look or not. I feel that it's more that it's festering. I don't think it's gnawing at our souls yet.
I agree.
I think it's festering, and that festering can build to gnawing. But I think it's festering because people are aware of stuff going on. Everybody knows what's going on, whether they choose to admit it or not. It's festering. You know, it's coming, it's creeping up. But the gnawing yet, where it's like, dag, it's gnawing, it's eating at me. I feel it. No, I don't think the gnawing is taking place, but the festering, yeah.
That's interesting. The words flip for me, but I still think it is deep. I still think that whether it's festering or gnawing, whichever one you think is more severe, I think that has already happened. I think it is already more severe. Yeah. That mold has turned black.
Yeah.
I do believe so.
But I also think, Andrea, there are some people who, no matter what, just don't refuse to see things for what it is. It's not within the realm of their reality, their privilege, their sense of entitlement, the way that their life is. They don't see the other side because it's always been that way for them, and they don't see anything different.
Do you think that they don't see it, or they just choose?
It's all a choice.
Right.
All a choice, always a
They
choice.
see it. I think they're very well
But they don't recognize it in any depth. It's like, well, you know, that was those days. It's changed. It's 2024. You know, you're not slaves anymore. What are you complaining about? Don't you kids go to school every day? You know, you have houses, you have corporate jobs. Y'all had a black president. Come on now.
Y'all had a black president.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's part of the intentional reframing of how the story is being told. Because we're not getting all these underlying details. It's only these surface things. Look, you had a black president. Look, you have this, you have that. But we don't know as a country all of the dirt, all of the nasty things that were done. They were very proud of what they did at the time. So it's like, just tell the truth and shame the devil.
They don't want to do that.
But, you know, it's this thing where so much of our history, and every society does it, that they sanitize their history to support whatever message that they want to get forward. And that's what's happening now, and that's what's really bothering me about what's happening, especially in certain states with the curriculum, that certain things can't be taught. You know, you can teach that there was a civil war, but you can't teach other things about the race component of it. You can't teach about how, you know, blacks weren't allowed to fight at first and then they had no choice but to allow them to fight. We've got this very sanitized version of Abraham Lincoln. It just, people don't know, or enough people don't know, and they sincerely believe what they're doing is right. How do you deal with that? I think it's something that, like Reverend Sharon said, is festering.
One of the things Isabel Wilkerson said, and I'm paraphrasing, in one of her interviews was that one of the reasons she wrote this book was not just for those who are on the lower level of the caste system, wherever it is. It's for everybody, because unfortunately, most people that live in the caste system, especially those who are on top, don't realize how the caste system hurts them as well. Right? That everybody is being hurt by living in a caste system. Everybody's life could be better if they weren't living in the caste system. It is so important for, you know, in this country, for Black people not to get the social programs and not to have the medical care and not to have good education, then now nobody has medical care. Nobody has good education. Everybody gets affected by these caste systems, and that's one of the reasons why she wrote the book.
But I want to point out that there are 260 million Dalits worldwide. They live in South Asia, in India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And in communities for people who have migrated from South Asia across the globe. But we also do not think about those Dalits that live in the United States. Mm-hmm. And on some level, there is still a caste system existing right now in the United States with those Dalits who live in this country every day.
So, guys, I think we just scratched half of the surface.
Not even half.
Okay. But we still had a very meaty conversation, and I appreciate everybody's participation from the audience that we had here and for those who participated. Let me just make sure if there weren't anything else. The quote that we read gave some people chills. Yes, Reverend Terry, the school system sucks. The man with his arms crossed really got someone until it personally attacks our soul. We woke up slightly for George Floyd and Trayvon, but we are constantly distracted. So yeah, those are all definitely valid comments and other lines of discussions that we could have had, right, from this movie. It's so meaty, you know. So I encourage everybody, if they have a chance to see this movie. I don't know if it's still in theaters. It was on its way out. So I don't know if it's still in theaters or not. If it is, please make an effort to go see it. If not, when it comes out, you know, on whatever streaming service, please make sure you see it and go ahead and have these conversations and these discussions with friends and family about what you think about it. It's an important discussion to be had, and I think a good way for us to continue to learn.
But I also want to add, whenever Living Truth 365 invites you to join us to a movie, come on out and join us, because these are the type of movies that we feel need emphasizing and the kind of discussions that we feel like need to be had. So come on and join us the next time that we say LT 365 is going to the movies. Get you a ticket and come on with us.
So the movie that we discussed, go back. The movie that we discussed is called Origin, right? It is directed by Ava DuVernay. It starred Anjanou Ellis-Taylor, and it's based on the book Cast by Elizabeth Wilkerson. Isabel Wilkerson. I do apologize. Isabel Wilkerson. So please, if you have an opportunity to see it, please do so. We thank you again for your participation. This was a longer than normal Truth and Trending topic, but how could we have stopped this conversation? There was no way. We had to continue with it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Reverend Jada, who's going to go ahead and do our announcements.
Oh, I am. Okay. Okay, next Sunday we have Dr.
Nope, not next Sunday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
We're walking.
Is it up there? Do we have?
You'll get to it. You'll get to it.
Well,
you done went through it. Why don't you just announce your way through it?
But we need to get to what's happening next Sunday. Next Sunday, we will be doing the Lust Garden Pancreatic Research Walk. So we won't be having service, but we will be doing the walk. And it's a wonderful event we've been doing since its inception. And so we want to raise $1,000 as a team, as the Living Truth team. We want to raise $1,000. So please join us for the Lust Garden Pancreatic Research Walk. It starts at 8:30 at the Portia Experience. So if you can't come, then you can also support those who are walking. So make sure that you lend your support to us, because we want to raise this money. It's for a great cause.
And remember, we will not be here, so don't come, because nobody's going to open the door. You can't get in. Go and meet us at the Mercedes Experience, Porsche Experience.
And then the Sunday after that, March 24th, we're going to have Dr. Rocco Errico. He will be the leader for our Journey in Truth. Here, he's the preeminent Aramaic biblical scholar on the planet. So please come out and get his wisdom and knowledge. Is where we doing this? Okay, it's our giving. It's our time for giving here. So we have 2 ways that you can give to Living Truth. Through Tithely, you can set up your one-time account, and also to my favorite way of giving, which is Cash App. Our Cash App handle is $LT365. So I'm gonna give you a moment to get your giving together. We're gonna get that done. So, and if anyone here needs an envelope, raise your hand, let us know, and we'll give you that envelope. And online people, remember, living is $LT365. So wherever you are, in your living room, in your bedroom, in your pajamas, in your bedside Baptist mode, you can still give $LT365. That's our Cash App handle. So go ahead and take some time and go ahead and do your Cash App giving. And if we're done, just raise your head and let me know.
I finished.
All right, so we're going to do our gift of circulation affirmation. We're going to do this 3 times.
There is no lack or limitation. There is only infinite abundance. And through my giving, I tap into the infinite flow, and I am one with it. There is no lack or limitation. There is only infinite abundance. And through my giving, I tap into the infinite flow, and I am one with it.
Again, with power.
There is no lack or limitation. There is only infinite abundance. And through my giving, I tap into the infinite flow, and I am one with it.
3 times together.
I am tapping infinite prosperity and sharing. I am tapping infinite prosperity and sharing. I am tapping infinite prosperity and sharing. And so it is. Y'all sounded so good.
And we have some announcements for the week. Moments in Meditation, wonderful opportunity for us to get together with like-minded individuals on Thursday evenings, 7 p.m., facilitated by our own Reverend Drea. So please join us there. It's online via Zoom, 7 p.m. Thursday evenings. The Noor Foundation, that's Dr. Rocco's foundation. He has the Aramaic School of Light, and he has classes every second Saturday of the month. Is for a $30 fee per class, but he also has another class on Wednesday evenings for a love offering from 7 to 8 p.m. So go ahead and get involved with the Noor Foundation so you can get more of Dr. Rocco's information. He can be reached at the Noor Foundation at mail.com. That's Noor Foundation at mail.com, not Gmail, mail.com. All right, we are in our Breaking Barrier season. That's what we're doing this year in 2024, and we want to keep up to date with you all and see how you're doing with your accountability partners, how you're doing in your breaking barriers. Every Friday, we have a 7 a.m. call. I know it's early, but it's really quick, and we just want to check in to see how you all are doing. So check in at us 7 a.m. for a 10, 15-minute call. Let us know how you're doing. Just log on at 712-775-8969. And our code for that is 936892. Now, February was what no longer serves you, we're releasing. So we're going to continue that. With what we are releasing, we're releasing those electronic items, those cell phones, those tablets that you have that are no longer working for you. Bring them in. We're collecting them so we can give them away to people who can have better use for them. So if you have some cell phones sitting around, those, what is it, iPhone 6, 7s, and 8s that you're no longer using?
iPhone 3.
3? Bring them to us, and we're going to be able to give them to people in the community that can make some use of them.
Also, we're also donating old eyeglasses. So if you have some old eyeglasses,
I think we'll get to that.
bring them. Oh, I didn't know we had another slide for it. My bad. Go for it.
We also have our Discovering Truth classes that are going on. That is being facilitated by our own Reverend J.C., and she is facilitating the Principles of New Thought. It's a wonderful foundational book about new...
Reverend Jada? Reverend Sharon will be facilitating the Principles of New Thought.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Yes.
But it's a wonderful foundational book about truth principles, and I would encourage you all, even if you aren't able to attend the course, pick up the book and make sure you have it in your library, because it's a wonderful reference book to have, The Principles of New Thought. All right, we are in our 40-day Lenten season. I hope you all are going to be checking in with us on those Friday mornings. Just let us know how you're doing in this Lenten season. If you're giving up something physical, if you're giving up something mental, and how's that working for you? And of course, we talked about the Lust Garden Walk. That's going to happen next Sunday. So don't come here for service. Go to the Porsche Center on 1 Porsche Drive here in Atlanta, and we're going to be participating in that walk.
Where's that, down near the airport?
Yeah.
And if you are participating in the Breaking Barriers program, this is a Breaking Barrier event. So that means you come to this, right? We have specific events, especially for those in the Breaking Barrier program. So all of you who are in the Breaking Barrier program, we look forward to seeing your beautiful faces at the Porsche Experience. If for whatever reason you can't make it, you don't live in town or what have you, then a donation would be appreciated. All right. Thank you.
And we are going to Spa Land now, y'all, because we need to revitalize ourselves. Saturday, March 23rd, join us at Spa Land. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to really invest in yourself.
Recover from that 5K walk.
And recover from that 5K walk, yes.
This is also a Breaking Barrier event. So we would love for you to participate in this as well, because this is the month of health. So self-care is a part of health. So that's why we're having this event, and we encourage you to join us for that. Thank you.
And if I can just give a shameless plug.
Shameless.
For those of you who were not on the call yesterday with Reverend Sandy Rogers, you missed a big one.
Yeah.
You really missed it. Yeah. We're putting on these things for Living Truth community. You really need to participate in these things to really get the full value of it. She was absolutely fantastic.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
We want your favorite recipes, because we're favorite healthy recipes.
There you go.
Because we're putting together a Living Truth 365 recipe book. And if you were with us with Reverend Sandy yesterday, you know how important it is to fuel ourselves properly. Mm-hmm. So go ahead and, think about those healthy dishes that you've been making, or the ones that you want to make, and send it to us. So we want to put together this digital Living Truth 365 recipe book so that we can have it for our community and for the larger community, so that we'll know what are the proper kinds of foods that we can put in our system that lends ourselves to optimal health.
Also, please try the recipes before you send them to us. Make sure we got the right, measurements, whatever it is we need. Just make sure you try them before you send them in.
Right,
Thanks.
just more than a pinch of this or a little bit of that. And...
whatever it is, just make sure that it works. It's a good recipe. Don't just find something online and send it. You try it first, please.
Send your Living Truth, you send your recipes to Living Truth 365 recipes at gmail.com. The submission deadline is March 16th. So get those into us. I'm hoping that Joan will send us that lentil soup recipe. Thank you, Joan.
Right around the corner to 16.
And we are also collecting your eyeglasses that you are no longer using. So donate your old eyeglasses to us so we can help bless someone else so they can see.
Like me.
Right.
Like
And
me.
hopefully I'll be able to see better though during the Uno games. I can differentiate between blue and green. So yes, so bring in those old eyeglasses that you may have around. We're collecting that. Because everybody need to be able to see the reverse card during Uno.
Yep.
Get your reppin' tees at Kafani Studios at KafaniStudios.etsy.com. You want to rep spirituality, you want to rep truth, you want to rep consciousness, get your reppin' tees. We have them. This is a way for you to also donate to Living Truth. And also, we also have merch, our Breaking Barrier merch that's available, and Reverend Drea has on her Breaking Barrier
Terry got one on too.
sweatshirt today. Reverend Terry has on his Breaking Barrier shirt today. They are really beautifully designed. Thank you, Reverend Drea. Wonderful. So yeah, those Breaking Barrier tees, and people will walk up and talk to you about, what is that? And then you'll be able to tell them, oh, let me tell you something about Living Truth. Let me tell you where you can get your Breaking Barrier shirt.
100% of the proceeds go to Living Truth and the programs that we put on here for everyone. So it's a way for you to really support Living Truth 365.
We have a website, y'all. We are two feet in the 21st century. 10 toes down, as the children say, at livingtruth365.org. So all this information that we're talking about here, all these events that we're talking about, the Breaking Barriers series, the ministers that are coming here to speak, all that can be found on our website at livingtruth365.org. So you can always go there and see what's happening in the Living Truth 365 community. So please log on. Well, this ends our service today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to end with our Breaking Barrier affirmation for 2024. So we're going to repeat this 3 times.
There are no barriers in God. Therefore, there can be no barriers in me. There are no barriers in God. Therefore, there can be no barriers in me. There are no barriers in God. Therefore, there can be no barriers in me. And so it is.
Go in peace.